Welcome to today's program. My name is Tim Cross. I'm the pastor of Living Word Church. We thank you for joining us in our program for Men Only, where we talk about some issues for men, and that's thus the name of the program, for Men Only. And I've got with me Kim Cyr. Kim's good to see you. Shake my hand.
Good to see you too.
Kim and I have known each other for 20-some years, man.
Been a
2
while.
years, it'll be 30. My goodness. I remember when your hair didn't have any gray in it.
That was a long
Okay. And Ken Armstrong, good to have you today. Praise God. I've just known you for a few years now, so
Just a few.
just a few. But these are two good men.
I still don't have the gray.
You still don't have. Shut up.
colors.
Yeah. All right. Now, guys, we've done a few programs here lately, and we talked about the issue of pornography and a little, some things about lust. And I want to start off by saying a couple things. We want to talk about this today, but we're not here to hammer, to come down and say this is horrible. You're going to hell because you do it. Because I think biblical truth, biblical morals can stand almost alone. I mean, that you can take a look at things, and just from the natural standpoint, we can take a look at how certain things affect you, how they can affect you. I mean, I believe biblical morals can be understood logically.
Right.
And so, Ken, we were at a marriage seminar, and it was rather interesting. I mean, Mark Gunga, that was great. We had great. We were watching some videos, and he had 2 sessions on how to have incredible sex.
Yes, he did.
How did I miss that?
Yeah.
He did.
Oh man, it was good.
Needless to say, none of the guys missed that session.
Yeah. And he talked about some things, and I mean, from a Christian perspective and from a biblical perspective, he did a fabulous job. But he dealt with some of these issues concerning pornography. And why don't you share some of the things he shared there?
Well, when you're dealing with, sex is a natural thing. I mean, God created man, created woman, and then that whole process is by God. So, it is a natural thing. It should be good, and it should be a great thing in your life. But, when you get into pornography, one of the things that he talked about a lot was that, them women, in a way, they're really not real. So your expectations or your thought patterns of what a woman looks like, how a woman acts, the type of things that go on in that type of setting, they're really not real. And so, it just taints everything, and then to come back to reality becomes very difficult.
Right.
I tell something to my wife. My wife likes home shows.
Oh yeah, home shows
as it like when you have the home tour, thing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And she wants to go to these things, and it's like, what you do is you end up going to a bunch of brand new homes.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
That nobody's ever lived in. There's never been any kids in them.
Perfect.
Nothing's ever been spilt. No walls been ran into. Nothing like it. And you go in and you look at all these beautiful homes that have just been finished construction, new carpet, new everything. And everything looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And you can live. I don't, we're actually shooting in my home. I don't have a bad home. I mean, I've got a decent home. It's not a mansion or anything, but it's a nice home.
Right.
But after you see all those beautiful homes that have nobody's even played in the yard yet.
Right.
And to go inside, you got to put the little booties on.
Oh, yeah.
So nobody has walked through there with dirty shoes or anything. And I say, you go to those things, and after a while, you look at them and you start despising what you've got.
Exactly.
Right.
You may
We
think,
need to make some
right.
changes here.
when you compare the unrealistic to the realistic,
Right.
it's like, you won't be satisfied. You can come back and say, man, I live in a pigsty, our pig pen or something like that.
Yeah.
And so something happened. Now, Kim, you were talking about what can begin to happen with pornography and that downward spiral.
Well, I think what happens in what you see happen is a lot of times it can be real innocent, start real innocent, maybe even just clicking on something on the computer that you kind of see or whatever. But if you get involved in it, and if you let yourself go down that road and are enticed by it and start to want more of it, it's almost like drugs. It gets to a point where you look for something that maybe excited you in the past that you're seeing visually. It doesn't really do it anymore. So you maybe go for something that's a little more intense. and it can actually get to the point where it may even be that you're looking for something in that sexual realm that's brutal or something along those lines. There's a progression that can take place, and it only takes you in a downward spiral. It's pretty hard just to play with it and not get burned.
Right.
And so that
Don't start.
So if you can get caught up in that fantasy, that's not real.
Exactly.
Right.
Like none of that stuff is real
Exactly.
in pornography. They're airbrushed. They put on all sorts of stuff. I think we were talking about earlier.
And it's acting. Most of it's acting.
Yeah. So, and then I said, and I think there's a side in that I think I heard somebody in a report that the pornography industry was afraid of HD TV or HD because all of a sudden their flaws and their scars and their bruises and their
Lifts and their tucks and all the rest of that stuff.
will begin to come out.
Right.
And so because it's not reality. And then it's almost like, looking at these unreal homes, and you come back and it's hard to be satisfied with what, if I could say it this way, what is normal.
Right.
And that's what can happen. You can get to a point where your spouse no longer does that for you, no longer excites you, and you're in a bad situation.
Yeah.
It's not going
And
to help.
the other part of it is if you even get to the other extreme, you'll get to the point where nothing can satisfy you. It can drive you, to the point where it's just like a drug where the highest of high is no longer good enough. And that's why they get into manufacturing something totally new, because people have gotten so used to the old and it doesn't do enough. So they're manufacturing something. And it gets
more and more brutal as you go farther. And we talked about this. Well, I don't even know if I want to go there. It's
well, the
disgusting.
conditioning,
The
though,
child
too.
stuff
The conditioning of yourself and of your mind, and if you cannot achieve that satisfaction, and you get to a point where you can't achieve that anymore, you'll get so frustrated with yourself. You're taking yourself into that downward spiral, and you're going to get so frustrated with yourself that you can't get satisfied, that you're going to destroy everything.
Yeah.
In the process of trying to somehow achieve that.
Well, part of it is even let's say the whole video image thing, that you get involved in that kind of thing, and that's not really satisfying anymore. And then maybe you start thinking, well, gosh, I need somebody that can do this for me. Where are the prostitutes in town, or
Right.
whatever? And it's not good.
Yeah. Where does it end?
I know, that's exactly right.
And then not only that, the destroyed marriages. I think
Exactly. That's what happens.
Mark was talking about the guys that had gotten so caught up in that they, we want to keep this PG. They couldn't even perform because of how much it had affected them. That it does have a psychological effect.
Yes.
And then Kim, you talk about people, they go eventually, they look at prostitutes, or the destruction that comes to homes, or even I remember. In previous programs, we talked about the fact that all of us at some point or another in our lives have had to deal with these issues.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're not talking by theory. We've seen some of that. But I remember this has been years ago here in the Muskegon area. I went to the debate. I think the Muskegon Public Schools was looking at bringing in a sex education program. And so I just went to, they had a big school board meeting. They had to put it in a new place, and the place was just packed, and different people came up and were saying things. And I remember one of the school board members, this has been probably 20 years ago, somebody was complaining, my child, what will happen with I don't want them in this. And the school board member said, listen, okay, your child can opt out of this sex ed course.
Right.
But then I never forget this parent's response. Said, but my child can't opt out of the culture of how
that you're creating with that in the school.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
And the way, and especially part of the thing that, especially with pornography, what becomes acceptable, what becomes accepted in society, and especially among men.
Right.
What becomes how you look at women, how you view a woman, rather than somebody to be cherished and protected and honored and respected as a woman, they're a piece of meat. And that's what that pornography does, and it takes something, Ken, like you were saying, sex was God's idea.
Right.
you know, this wasn't something man thought up. God thought up. I mean, God put the organs where they're at.
God made it good.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
He sure did. Thank God for it.
Right.
So we're men, all right. We like sex with our wives.
There you go.
There you go. All right.
That's right.
But God's the one that came up with it. Came up with the idea of how it should be done.
He wanted it to be pleasurable. That was the name of the game. You know?
Yeah. But somehow it has got totally perverted. And I think we said in previous program, one of the average age of early exposure or exposure to hardcore pornography is roughly 12 years old.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 12,
Really?
yeah, which boys about puberty or just before they hit puberty, where their hormones are going all over the place, their first exposure to pornography or sex is not a pure one, it's not a biblical one, a godly one, is a totally ungodly, unhealthy,
Right.
totally unhealthy situation.
And one of the things that was brought up in that marriage retreat we just did with Mark Gungor talked about is how a man photographs. His experiences become embedded into his brain. And so if you start looking at that and you've got a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old, which has become that average age where all this is coming in there, think about how much damage is done in that brain. What image that person, that young man has when he does finally get to the point of, you know, dating or courting or finding his wife in later years. I mean, it's just, there's no way to come into that relationship under a normal status,
right? Because
of that image that's
with a pure heart and pure mind.
And then how does he view the girls at school?
Well, exactly.
Right.
And how does he talk about them?
Right.
You know, goodness. All right, now listen, we've got to take a break. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about this, because then it comes up to adults. How does this affect a man in his workplace, a man in his home, and a man in how he deals with his children? So stay tuned. We'll be back in a few moments.